The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/Central PA SportsMed to learn more.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Pennsylvania High School Football Report podcast. I'm Brian Linder. I'm with Eric Epler. Eric, let me hear your voice, my man.
How you guys doing today?
Dan Sostek, let him hear your voice.
Dan. That's it.
If you guys listen to the podcast religiously, like Carolyn Fortney does, then you already know who those guys are. But if you don't, you'll know who they are when they talk. And if you've been listening just the last 2 or 3 weeks, I haven't been around, a little under the weather. I'm back in the saddle again. I came back just in time to watch Dan Celtics melt down after the Kristaps Porzingis injury.
I generally don't want to
lead to the Mavericks.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it. And
like Kyrie Irving to forever.
You're not getting me to talk about it. I'm not talking about the series till it's over. We can just move on. I'm not talking about it.
Yep. Dan will get heated over the Celtics.
It's not even that. I just don't want to talk about it. I'm too nervous about it.
I haven't followed the series.
He quit texting me one point last year during the playoffs.
Yeah, because whenever a team that's not yours is in the playoffs, you just kind of screw with people and just like, ooh, look at that, and
I don't have a team. I watch more WNBA now than I do NBA, but I only watch the NBA during the playoffs. I don't really have a team anymore.
Yeah, well, the WNBA's gone pretty well, so
I feel like the NBA just ramps up like exponentially, like 5 times better during the playoffs.
Yeah, although tonight it's game 3 for the Celtics, and they're doing the Tom Brady Hall of Fame induction on the same time at 8 p.m. at Gillette Stadium. So, kind of poor planning on this.
Yeah,
Boston.
that's bad time.
Yeah, not in Boston though. At least that would have been a disaster.
Yeah, Tom Brady. I recommend everybody watch that series. Right, Dan?
Yeah. If you're big fans of Bob Kraft, watch that series. If you go to Gillette Stadium wearing a big Bob Kraft jersey, then you should go watch that. Go watch that documentary.
I thought it was well done, Dan. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I've been watching Bronx Zoo 90. You guys should watch that on Peacock. What do you think?
Bronx Zoo 90.
I don't know what that is.
It's about the New York Yankees 1990 season and just how insane it was.
I'm good. I don't need to watch
involves the
anything about the
Yankees. I'm not watching it.
It is insane. It's not necessarily a favorable light cast on them.
Mhm.
They were not good, and they had a criminal playing in the outfield, and Steinbrenner hated Dave Winfield.
I remember ESPN did that dramatized actor show while the Bronx is burning or something. But if I'm going to watch a show with actors playing New York Yankees, I'm just going to watch Seinfeld. So just watch Larry David do the George Steinbrenner. So
it's well done. So if you guys are looking for something that is good TV, good watching, there you go.
Thanks.
So, anyway, we're talking football here. I'll give you my movie recommendation at the end of the show.
Uh-oh.
But we're talking football here, and we were just talking. We had our meeting yesterday. We have our meetings on Tuesdays with our sports team at PennLive, and we're like a little less than 80 days. I think it's like 77 days or something until football season coming in here. I'm pretty excited about this season coming up. We've been talking about for two years, 25 and 26 classes being as talented as they are in the Mid-Penn. I think they're special. We're looking ahead here. We're getting ready to probably get into football edition and stuff like that in just a couple of days. I want to talk about where we're at right now, what we're feeling excited about this upcoming year. Whether or not Camp Hill is going to go undefeated and Drew Brandstatter is going to throw for 70 touchdowns was a big topic Drew. That was a big topic at our meeting. And we'll go statewide, I guess, probably next week, but just focusing this week probably on the Mid-Penn. who are some of the guys, some of the things you're most excited about as we go through the summer and coming in early fall?
Well, I think that it feels like to me, and obviously I no disrespect to Stone Saunders, obviously going to be one of our big names. His final season in McDevitt, there's a lot of records within striking distance for Stone. Obviously, a lot of those are currently held by Alex Irby, who just departed and led Steel High to another state title in December. So, but you look beyond Stone, and Dan and I last week talked a lot about Tyler Merrill and, of course, Kevin Brown. And I think really, those two guys have really set the bar extremely high and basically pulled the focus in on the grunts, the guys down low, the guys who do the dirty work. Obviously Brown on both ends, on both sides of the ball. And we got to see him again. We got to see both of them I did at Susquehanna at their annual spring fling, I guess it's called, if I have that correct, a few weeks back. It's interesting too, because, as far as Brown and again, Merrill's been tremendous too, but everybody who sees Brown, like if there's a couple of month gap difference and they see Brown, they're like, Jesus, like he's even better. Like he's even faster. He's even angrier. And he's just, he just, like I said, he sets the bar so high. And we have these guys now for 2 years. So I think pulling those linemen back in and maybe shining a light on the guys who do the dirty work is going to be fast and furious this year and next year. So I'm looking forward to that, because I think there's some other guys coming back too that are ready to kind of take that step next, not just as full-time starters, but guys that you see in August and you're like, well, wait a minute, the last time I saw him, he was 40 pounds lighter and he didn't look as jacked up, so they spent the last 6-7 months in the weight room getting ready. So I'm looking forward to seeing those guys and a couple of those guys emerge. That's the biggest thing for me, because I do believe that we've lost a good amount of these high-end skill guys, and it's not just guys that we talked about in Steel High guys, and guys like Cole Bartram, have moved on. And so these new running backs are gonna, so who's the guys going to replace a guy like that, a 2,000-yard rusher like that? We'll get a lot of the sense in early August, obviously, but I think over the summer we could sort of pick and choose from different lists and kind of guess what this guy and this guy's going to do in their program. So I'm looking forward to that in the summer. I'm not a huge fan overall of 7-on-7s, just because the linemen aren't at play. But I get the value in, first and foremost, just the camaraderie between a quarterback and his weapons, and to kind of get the steps down and work on route running and things like that. So there'll be a lot of that over the next 6-7 weeks before we really steam up there at the end of July.
Yeah, local coaches, if you've got a big 7-on-7, I'm actually going to be sending out some emails, but we'd love to get out and check some of you guys out and do some stuff like that. But, you bring up the lineman. This is probably the most, I've had some big time linemen. I've had number one ranked linemen that I've covered in the nation, going all the way back to South Carolina with Daquan Bowers at Bamberg Earhart High School. But this is probably the best 1-2 punch. I think legitimately probably top 100 players in the country with Tyler Merrill and Kevin Brown. And Dan, I always say, you're a big UFC fan, but I always say Tyler Merrill looks like a big offensive lineman to me, and then Kevin Brown looks like a UFC heavyweight champion. He's more chiseled and he's just a freak of nature. So they're put together a little bit differently, I think. And it's really the most interesting 1-2 punch, especially of offensive linemen. And I think Kevin Brown, guys, could also be a very good defensive lineman, if he wanted to. So I think he is right now in the high school level as well. But it's the most interesting 1-2 lineman punch I've ever covered.
Yeah, I mean, it's also coming off it's coming off, guys like Michael Carroll committed to Alabama the other day, and Michael Hershey. Like, there's just been a ton of good linemen in PA. There's always like one or two, but it feels like there's an even bigger crop coming now, and I'm sure these won't be the last. I think even Kevin Brown's little brother, how good he's going to be, but yeah, it just feels like that might be the next sort of position because we've got big kids around here, so you just need to kind of combine either the athleticism or the strength. And uh, you know, Kyler was a kid that I think they just saw who kept growing and growing and was 6'5", 300 pounds, and not and in a way that wasn't like he was like he looked like a football player. So, and then Kevin Brown just has continually put on weight because there was a time when before his freshman year, they were wondering if he's going to play tight end or offensive tackle. So, uh, yeah, it's definitely an exciting time for the linemen.
I'm glad you brought Michael Carroll. I mean, 6'6", 315 pounds. Said we would talk about a little bit about the Mid-Penn, but good shout out there. Central Bucks East prospect. His dad played at Penn State, and I know they really wanted him. He committed to Alabama, so that was a big statewide commit. Big loss for Penn State, I think. He's a 4 or 5 star prospect, 4 star on 247. So
Yep.
sure, State would love to have.
Yeah. And then just as talking about things we're looking at, I think we've talked about it a decent amount, but now that we're getting closer, I'm just really excited for this. The new divisional alignment, just because it's a matchup that has happened before, but not since I've been here. And I mean, the matchup this year might be as anticipated as it's ever been between Harrisburg and Bishop McDevitt. Just getting them back in the same, and for me, that's obviously the piece de resistance, of like the divisional changes, right? That you get the Harrisburg McDevitt matchup. But I'm excited for all the matchups McDevitt's going to have in the Commonwealth. Like, they're all really interesting to me. I think Cumberland Valley is going to be a really fun test because I think there are a lot of questions on offense for Cumberland Valley, but that defense I think is going to be good. It's going to be real solid again. I think Josh is going to have them playing well. And you have State College, which might be a little bit of a revenge game, so to speak, for because they lost Deontay Sheffy to Harrisburg. So that'll have some interesting storylines there. And then a team like CD East don't really know what they're going to look like this year, but they've got talent as well. There are a lot of interesting matchups for McDevitt. It's not going to be. I think McDevitt is still going to be in the running to like make a deep run in the states or whatever, but I don't think they're going to have the point differential that they had the last 5 years going into the playoffs. They're going to have some tough tests, and I think it's going to be good I think it's going to be really good for the team, and I think it's really good for football in the area too. And that's not even talking about all the other divisional changes that heck I can't really keep track of. But I feel like if you're talking about the story of the divisional changes in the Mid-Penn, that's probably the number one item, right? Is McDevitt getting into that Commonwealth.
Yeah, and they get Harrisburg early too. It's they host them. I think it's the last day of August.
Yeah.
So that could be one of those powder keg games too. It could be 100 degrees on the turf.
So for people who don't know, that Harrisburg McDevitt game, Bishop McDevitt game in Harrisburg was always a big time rivalry. Especially here in central Pennsylvania. It's probably one of the better rivalries in Pennsylvania. But that game had been off for several years since Micah Parsons had played there. And the reason why we did a story on it, we probably had some part in it, is back during COVID, they were supposed to play. And McDevitt had to cancel the game out because they came down with, I think like 7 kids had COVID. Harrisburg coach Calvin Everett kind of felt like McDevitt was ducking him on that. And he called me up and he put it in print. He said, print it. And I called McDevitt up and McDevitt didn't really respond to it, but they kind of took the game off the table because they felt like it was a low blow from Cal. And Cal felt one way and they felt one way. And it was off. And they were not going to play again, guys. They talked about it a little bit, talking to Coach Jeff Wechter and Cal. But I think it was a McDevitt according to both of those guys, it was a McDevitt administration thing. They did not appreciate how it said, so it was taken off the table, and then you get the realignment, which brings it all back around where they have to play now, and that's gonna. I don't think people understand. That's going to be a real treat for people in the city. But this first game will probably be a dogfight, just because there's probably still some people feeling some kind of way about how it ended back during COVID. So it'll be interesting to be exciting to see. Like you guys said, we'll have probably if Harrisburg gets everybody eligible, guys. We've talked about this before. I mean, that team has a chance to be special.
Yeah.
And then McDevitt has got a quarterback who's going to go play in the SEC, and they lost a lot of skilled guys and some linemen too. Be interesting to see where they're at, but it should be a fun game. I mean, that's to me, that's the
I
highlight.
mean, I'm excited to see Dominic Diaz, who I think is back in McDevitt. He's kind of been I feel like every year there's 1 to 2 McDevitt kids that you just start kind of hearing about, and you start seeing they get offers. You're like, I don't really know. And then like all of a sudden they put up 1,000 yards or whatever. Like I'm thinking back to 2 years ago with Tyshawn Russell. That was even more of sort of an out of nowhere type thing, because he hadn't had a single receiving yard before his senior year, and then gets to go to South Carolina. But the Dominic Diaz, who transferred back, I forget from where was it? I forget if it was Columbia or from Columbia. He's been getting some high D1 off from like Kent State, and he's getting some real nice looks. And they're going to need someone to replace. Well, they're not going to have anyone replace Rico Scott. No one in Central Pennsylvania is going to replace the type of athlete Rico Scott was. But they're going to need some people to, replace the production of both him and Chase Reagan at wide receiver. I really like Jonte Quick, but I think Diaz is going to be a big name to watch there too. So they have him, and they have Maurice Barnes. Why am I blanking on the running back's name? Help me out with the running back.
Nazir Davis Jones.
Davis.
So yeah, they've and then they've got some guys in the secondary place too. Losing Nevin Hopkins and Jair Ralston's a big deal. Ty Kephart as well. They've lost a ton of players, but you still have the quarterback. They've still got a guy with a Notre Dame offer at linebacker and Maurice Barnes. They've still got plenty of talent. And I'm sure there are kids waiting in the wing to be just as good. But that Harrisburg team, there's a chance they have 4 or 5 all-state kids by the time it's over.
If they, and again, I say if they're eligible, and I say that because I asked Coach Cal when we found out that Messiah Mickens from Trinity, the Penn State commit, had transferred in, and that Deontay Sheffy, the Syracuse commit from State College, had transferred in, if they were going to be eligible, if they're going to have any issues, and he said he didn't know. And that was back when, Dan, you got the story, and we worked on that together. That's been a couple months now, right? So I think I was back in March. We got that. So the athletic director's telling us he's not sure. There's going to be eligibility issues. I'm sure there'll be some sort of hearings because they're talented players and they transferred, and people get up in arms about that. And there are rules, so we'll see how that plays out. But if they get everybody eligible, I mean, Harrisburg, again, we've said this before, could be a state title contender.
Yep. And I mean, I know Ep was talking about not liking the 7-on-7s. I tend to be more towards Ep's side, where it's not that I don't like it, but it's hard to glean a ton from it. But I think the one thing you do get is from these teams that you're kind of looking for a little clarity on who the next guys are going to be. It does kind of give you a little bit of insight into who they think are going to be the next starting wide receivers or the next big impact guys. And there's a lot of teams that, especially in that Commonwealth, where that information is going to be really important. I think Cumberland Valley is another one where they lost something. I don't have the numbers in front of me, and I'm not good at math. I'm an English major, but they had to have lost around like 90% of their yardage from last year, losing Bryce Starretts and Caden Pines. So I imagine Brody Pines is going to be one of their top receivers. I'm really interested to see who replaces Bryce Starretts in terms of yardage and things, and because he was such an important piece to that bounce back last year. I just heard really good things about Nolan Mazolka on the offensive end too, because he's been a defensive guy the last couple of years. I think we've talked about him a lot on this podcast, but I think he's going to have an impact on the offensive end too. But that's kind of where this 7-on-7 has a little bit of value. I think is just seeing. I think we're going to learn about a lot of these teams how they're going to replace who they're at least banking on early to replace some of these kids.
The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/Central PA SportsMed to learn more.
Again, I think the Harrisburg Bishop McDevitt is what I'm most excited about. I brought up Camp Hill. I think it could be really good this year. They're a fun offense to watch. They run the air raid with Drew Brandstatter. He puts up some big numbers throwing the ball. I think there's always a question of depth and how many guys they got coming back. They lose Kobe Moore, who was a good player, but Alex Long's coming back. The Doy kid's coming back at wide receiver, I believe. They got all their wide receivers coming back. With the way they run that offense, and we were looking at their schedule, Camp Hill could have a big year, guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've all been pretty high on Drew Brandstatter, just kind of wringing everything out of that roster the last couple of years, and just really I think he just plays with a ton of confidence, with a ton of he's just a fun player to watch, and Ep has followed him this spring. He's had a really good baseball year too, but I know he's been working with Chad Henne. They have I don't want to say easier because it's disrespectful to the new schedule, but they don't have to play Messiah Mickens' Trinity team anymore. They don't have to play. They're playing a lot of the Liberty Division teams, which can be kind of tricky. They're different type of football that they play over there. They play some smash mouth football, but
The most key thing I have to play Fuel High with Alex Irby and Andrew Irby and Ronald Burnett and Jayon Perry, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing.
And they played them decently tough. Like I think it ended up being a blowout, but they didn't look like completely out of their depth, at least to start. But they're gonna have a lot of their guys back. I think Kobe Moore is gonna be a big loss just because that kid's just he's a winner. Like I think we've joked about him last week, but you could put that kid in a badminton competition. He'd probably help a team out. So Alex Long, I think, is also one of the more underrated receivers in the area. He's a really good wide receiver. They have a really good connection, those two. They do lose Tommy Corbin and Luke Becker, who were two of their better wideouts. And again, there's such a small roster that even losing three guys could be a bigger force multiplier than we think, right? Just because they really don't have many players, football team. And so that's the one thing you kind of worry about. I think a guy like Austin Shore will probably step up a little more. Ian Jack, guys like that. But when you have a talent like Drew Brandstatter, who I imagine he's one of those seniors that's going to start seeing these recruitment blow up during the summer and as we get closer to the fall, feels at least to me like a guy that will get some Ivy League looks and probably kind of around that level, maybe even more. Who knows? I just think, and just how well they played it in the state tournament too. They really left it all out there at Dunmore. I'm really really excited. Tim Bigelow is our coach of the year. He's one of the more creative offensive coaches I think we've got in the conference. Their offense is always fun to watch, and I think what's so great about him is that he kind of realized already, like, listen, we don't have the line to necessarily run the ball 30 times a game, right? We have a pass blocking line. We're going to throw the ball 30 to 40 times, and Drew's going to be our running game half the time. And
they don't even tend to want to run the ball sometimes.
Yeah, and that's what I think is. I think like sometimes coaches get too worried about we have to run the ball because that's how football's always been done. And Tim Bigelow was like, no, this is I gotta work with what my team has and what my team's good at. And I imagine he's going to do the same thing next year. And I don't want to guarantee anything, but I imagine we'll see them back in the state playoffs again.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Brian.
We have a handful of teams too. I was going to switch gears real quick. We have a handful of teams too that are going to be very interesting. They have a lot of questions to answer. Trinity 2 years ago was a District 3 champion, and Jordan Hill said they were a year ahead of schedule. Now they've lost, Messiah Mickens and a handful of good players from Jordan Hills at Penn State. Wes Perry, who's been in that District 3 title game a couple years in a row, they lost Marcus Quaker and a ton of their guys. Um, Hershey was pretty good last year. I think they lost a bunch of guys. Um, we got some teams that are going to look different this year in a big way. So I'm gonna be excited to see. Some of these teams that are usually they've been there, guys, or been on the cusp. Now it feels like they're having to reset.
Yeah, I think that's key. I mean, Westbury was one of the bigger ones that I was going to point out. Obviously, with Marcus Quaker and who's the wideout? I'm drawing a blank right now. Ian Goodling. Yeah,
Wideout, kicker, linebacker,
yeah,
everything.
I mean, those two guys were really the heart and soul of that team. And again, it's different. Dan alluded to Camp Hill sort of staying with their scheme. When when you're a smaller school and you've got maybe 6 or 7 linemen, and damn well that half of them, at least half, are going to go both ways. You sort of got to hide those guys on offense. So you run a quick trigger, quick strike offense like Camp Hill does and airs things out. But you got to have the quarterback to do it, and Camp Hill does. West Perry, obviously losing a guy like Quaker, who's been ingrained in that program for 4 years, is tough. It's a tough transition to make for them. So that'll be an interesting thing, an interesting part of the off season too, and how that position develops. Bob Bowden's always gotten max out of everybody who's in uniform. We know that, but it may be a little bit more difficult this year to kind of run out 8-1, 8-2, or something like that. I don't know if that's a possibility this year for West Perry.
But their numbers were up pretty good, so that's at least working in their favor, because I think they had around high 50s or 60s in kids. Just for comparison, Harrisburg's probably trotted out about 35 the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So
I've got a sleeper team for you guys that I've kind of been having my eye on, that I think could kind of emerge as like a team that no one really talks about preseason, but could end up being pretty solid. I know they've lost a couple players, but I wonder how good Gettysburg is going to be this year, because I really like Brady Heiser as a quarterback. I know that they've got some wide receivers coming back. I think that offense is going to be pretty good. Preston Burnett was just a sophomore last year at running back and linebacker. I think that team is a team that really could surprise some people, and I believe they're still in the Colonial Division, right? But that's another team I'm looking for, because I know Brady Heiser's been all across PA and the Northeast at some pretty decent next level camps, and has some decent Ivy League level interest. I think he's going to be a quarterback that has a lot to prove this year. So if we're going kind of off the beaten path stories, I think that Gettysburg team has a lot of returning talent. And that Jacob Dickerson's a big loss. He was a really good player for them. But because they were really good their first year. I believe they won the Colonial their first year. And I think they'd probably tell you a little bit of a disappointing 2023, but I could see them bouncing back with a big 2024.
it should be them and Hannah in that division, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we know too, Bill Miller out at Northern, he's going to find somebody who's going to come in and run for 200 yards a game, I feel like.
Yeah.
So, I won't count them out, but you figure it should be them and Hannah.
Preston Burnett's a really good player, though. He's a really good running back, really good linebacker too. They're going to have a pretty well-rounded offense, I think, because they've got all 3 levels, and they always have a decent offensive line. I feel like at Gettysburg, they always build those kids up. So I think that offense could be pretty fun. I think you're right that Susquehanna Township Gettysburg matchup will be pretty interesting this fall.
Guys, am I wrong? I don't think they're in the same division.
But they were last year.
Am I wrong about that?
They were last year. They were the Colonial.
Yeah.
I can't remember if they still are.
I think they were I think Hannah was one of the teams that was moved.
Yeah, that probably is correct.
Yeah.
That's probably correct because 4A.
Yeah.
I introduced the error then.
But still, that's all right. I mean, but you mentioned Gettysburg, Dan and Brian, you too. They have a pretty favorable opening stretch. Obviously, Chambersburg's still going to be tough because Chambersburg plays teams tough. I mean, they're going to be a lot better than last year. But then Waynesboro and Redland, we're sort of up in the air on those. But yeah, when they get into the heart of things, Mechanicsburg's always a tough sell. Hershey, which we haven't talked about.
Yeah.
And then Shippensburg, which you never know down there. But apparently they are getting a new field, so that's good news. That's
All right, guys.
finally good news for Coach Faust.
Yeah.
Here's the definitive answer, guys. I just checked the Mid-Penn website.
Yeah.
They do not have the divisions updated. They still have 5.
No.
Oh, that's shocking and stunning.
That's shocking. It's shocking to me.
We still have 5 divisions on the Mid-Penn website.
It's shocking.
So
yeah.
And we're only 80 days left, so they've got time.
Well, it's been a while since I looked at division. I could be wrong. I'm just I don't.
Yeah,
I did not see.
I think you're
I
right.
did not see Gettysburg Hannah on the schedule. So
you're right.
But again,
but Hannah is another interesting team too, just because.
Yeah.
I know Torrin Evans. He's been another kid you just see on Twitter, and every day he's at feels like he's at a different football camp. I feel like, sometimes when you have these freshman quarterbacks that are starting since they're freshmen, you kind of get stuck on what they were as a freshman and kind of miss how like the kind of the development they've gone through over the past couple of years. And this is kind of the year, I think, where he could, it's a big year for him, because I think if he has taken that next step, that offense is going to be really, really pretty good with just having it. Because if they find ways to get Lex the ball in space, it's gonna pay dividends. So
I can tell you, they're definitely going to find ways to try to get it to him.
Yeah, but I said last year, I still felt like they didn't get him the ball enough. Like I think there had to, I think you have to find ways, even if it's I know they tried to run bubble screens and they tried to do that, but you just got to he's got to touch the ball 10 times a game. Well,
the thing it was interesting because Torrin's first year, the things they didn't have a line, at all, and Torrin was running. Torrin, I don't think he was able to actually step through a pass, put his foot on the ground and actually follow through all year.
Yeah.
At least I saw Hannah 3 times with him under center as a freshman, and I don't think he threw stationary once. He was always on the run, and it was just bad. Last year, the line developed, Dorian Smith developed, and he had that rushing attack that could kind of think that was Coach Eden's go-to. You had 1,000-yard rusher, so you can rely on that offensive line. So this year should be much better for Torrin.
Yeah,
and he's also he's a smart guy. He's probably he might end up in the Ivy League. To be honest with you, I know he's he loves the Ivy League too. But yeah, you're right, Dan. He's just trying everything to better himself every day, and I think he's going to have a big year. I really do. And that trust, I think, will come back a little bit more. And obviously, you're going to have to now establish another running back and get that going. But I think Torrin's going to have a big year.
He's also got Jarrett Kern out there who's got some one offers at wide receiver. So they have some weapons. So
absolutely.
I can't find the Mid-Penn standings on the site either, guys.
No,
you have to bookmark them. They've taken them off the website.
Hold on, I get it. I have them somewhere. You guys chat. Give me a minute.
No, I have them.
Do you have anybody playing any spring games on the standings?
Well, no, the big thing is it's still the standings are still 5 divisions. So, it has Mifflin County 6-8 in softball. Every other team 0-0.
So no one's played a softball game yet, but the season's over.
There's a couple teams.
All right.
There's a couple teams.
Oh man, we're going down a rabbit hole that we don't need to go down
We
today.
are.
It's just sad. But hey, you know what, guys? I got to get on another call. We've done 30 minutes. I did talk. I want to say I did talk to Bobby Whalen, guys,
Yeah.
yesterday. Former Cedar Cliff standout. He's going to be playing in the College World Series.
Game one.
Oh, yeah, he's batting 370 for the Virginia Cavaliers.
Yep.
He was an excellent football player at Cedar Cliff. And I know we got some other Pennsylvania guys that are going to be in the College World Series. But Bobby was a really good football player. Yep, he tells me he's hoping for a shot, in July when the Major League Draft comes around.
He should get it, but I'll tell you why, because, he's one of those locker room guys. And now, the fact that he has no leverage as a grad student obviously puts him in a bad spot. But he's definitely going to get at least an undrafted free agent look. He'll get invited to, I think so, because he's a gamer, and the track record he had at Indiana was really good. He had 3 good years in Indiana. And then obviously this, he gets national TV now. ESPN is going to hold the College World Series. Virginia plays UNC in the opening game on Friday at 2:00 Eastern. So he'll get some looks there. And yeah, I think he's a kid that's draftable for sure. I mean, he's kind of a 5-tool guy. I mean, I don't know how many home runs he's hit, but he was tremendous in Cedar Cliff too as a baseball player, and obviously, a football guy too that we saw a lot of. But yeah, I wish him the best. He's done tremendous this year.
He says he's going to play baseball as long as he can, and
Yep.
after that, he talked about coaching high school baseball and hopefully some high school football. He said so.
Yep.
So there's a guy you can watch, that was a pretty darn good. Bobby Whalen could have played college football somewhere.
Absolutely.
Probably not a Division I guy, but he could have been an FCS guy, I think, and been pretty good playing football. And if you want to watch a PA guy who's having a heck of a year with a really good team, there's your guy for the College World
For a
Series.
baseball player at this level, at this point in time, I don't think it's like, maybe in the 60s or 70s, you didn't have to be like quite the athlete. I think nowadays, a lot of these baseball players, you still have to be pretty darn athletic. So,
Oh yeah.
like just the way the game's gone.
Movie recommendation: I watched The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. I thought it was pretty good. Dan, you watched it?
I did not watch that. No, I watched Hitman, which I'm a big Richard Linklater fan, but thought it was only okay. I'm more of a Boyhood and Dazed and Confused guy. So
There's a lot of awesome
And
movies there, man.
I feel like Dan watches a lot of movies. And then, of course, there's The Fan, if you want to go to the throwbacks.
that's a fun
And
movie. John Crux in it.
and Two for the Money is just a great
I knew you were going to bring up that filth.
movie with Matthew McConaughey and
Yeah.
Al Pacino.
Yeah, you
Go
know,
watch it, guys.
you know who could not have been an FCS player? Yeah, Matthew McConaughey. Yeah.
I did just
John
rewatch Slapshot recently and forgot that they had the Central PA in that movie. So that they go to Lancaster. So
Don Anthony, the man with the plan. Central PA, Dan, have you watched Lucky Numbers?
no,
You got to watch Lucky Numbers. It's literally filmed out on the Pike. The Denny's out on the Pike is literally in the movie. It's still there from when they filmed the movie. They eat there in the movie a lot.
it's a John Travolta. I like John Travolta. I'll watch it.
You will see stuff like that's still there out on the Pike.
Got Ed O'Neill. I will watch it and report back next week.
Guys, tell me how to find you on social media.
Dan_Sostek on X. Now you can't see my likes, so that's the new genius feature by our fearless leader Elon Musk. Is now your likes are private, so I can like as many ep tweets as I want without anyone judging me. So
Nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
I'm at 3Jacker.
And I'm at Sports by Linder. Check us out on social media. Also, check us out at PennLive.com. We'll have a story on Bobby Whalen on the website. We got some other stuff coming. Getting ready to have Spring All-Stars. We'll be rolling out some of those before you hear us next week. I think Epler's going fishing or something next week, so I don't even know if he'll be
Trying
around.
to catch a 10-foot mako.
So
bring some
What
back
did
to
you-
the office.
Yeah, I'm going to mount it.
Until next week, guys, when Dan gives us his lucky numbers review, This has been another podcast. See you then.
The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/Central PA SportsMed to learn more.